Rick was standing at his mailbox. He'd just pulled out a letter from his health insurance provider. The premium was going up. Again. He wasn't surprised, exactly. But the number stopped him cold. He'd done everything right. He retired at 62 with a pension coming in at 63. He had a financial advisor. He had a plan. And the plan said, use this window, the years before your pension starts, to convert your traditional IRA into a Roth. Lock in the lower tax rate. Grow it tax-free. Smart move. His advisor called it the golden window. The internet called it the golden window. Every personal finance channel called it the golden window. Rick converted $85,000 in 1 year. His tax bill went up, but he expected that. What he didn't expect was losing $15,000 in ACA subsidies in a single year. Because his income crossed a line he didn't even know existed. I've seen this happen more than once. And I'll be honest with you, I used to think the golden window was close to a perfect strategy. Then I started looking at what it actually does to a retirement healthcare budget when a pension is in the picture. The years between 60 and 65, before Social Security, before Medicare, before your pension kicks in, that window is real. The tax opportunity is real. But the window has a frame, and if you don't know where the edges are, you walk right through the glass. Today, I'm going to show you the collision point that most people miss, where your tax plan and your healthcare costs hit each other head on, and what it actually costs when no one on your planning team was watching both at the same time. And let's start with Rick's actual decision, because it's one a lot of people in their late 50s or early 60s are quietly sitting with right now. His pension offer gave him two choices. Take a lump sum of $500,000, or take $3,200 a month for the rest of his life. Most people look at that and think, $500,000 is a lot of money. I can invest it myself. I've been managing my 401k for 30 years. I know how this works. That instinct makes complete sense. After 30 years of building something, wanting to hold it in your hands is not a mistake. It's not greed. It's the natural desire to control what you earned. But here's what that math actually looks like. $3,200 a month is $38,400 a year. If you apply the standard 4% withdrawal rate, the portfolio you'd need to generate that income reliably is $960,000, not $500,000. So Rick's monthly pension isn't worth $500,000. It's closer to $960,000 in real purchasing power. That gap is almost $500,000 that doesn't show up anywhere on the offer letter. And that's before you factor in what the PBGC covers. As of 2026, the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation protects monthly payouts up to around $8,100 a month for someone retiring at 65. That's a federal backstop. It makes a pension more secure than most corporate bonds most people would ever buy. So the monthly pension is not the conservative choice. It might actually be the structurally stronger one. I've watched people walk away from pensions because the lump sum felt more real. A number you can see in an account feels different from a promise of monthly income. That's not irrational. But the feeling and the math are pointing in opposite directions. Now, neither choice is wrong for everyone. The lump sum gives you flexibility. If you die early, your heirs get something. If markets run hot, your portfolio might outperform the fixed payment. That's real. But the monthly pension gives you a floor, and a floor is not a small thing. At 85, if your portfolio has had 2 bad decades, that $3,200 still shows up every month without you having to do anything. The lump sum at 62 can run dry at 83 if sequence of returns works against you in the first few years. The monthly payment cannot run dry. Those are different kinds of security, and only one of them lets you stop watching the market entirely. Most people treat this as a financial question. It's also a psychological one, and we'll come back to that. But here's what matters most right now. The biggest risk in this decision isn't lump sum versus monthly. It isn't even the investment return assumptions. The biggest risk is what you do in the years before that pension income starts. Because while you're waiting for the pension to kick in, you're in a gap. You're not on Medicare yet. You might be buying health insurance through the ACA marketplace. Your income looks lower on paper, and that's exactly when the golden window strategy gets recommended. Convert your IRA to Roth now. Pay taxes at the lower rate. Let it grow tax-free. The logic is clean. The problem is what happens when that conversion pushes your income above a line you didn't know existed. Not your tax bracket, a different line. One that can cost you far more than the tax savings you were chasing. That's the collision most people never see coming. There's a reason the golden window strategy spread so fast, and it's not because people are careless. The market from 2023 through 2025 was good, really good. If you had money in an S&P 500 index fund, you watched it climb. And at some point, looking at those returns, a reasonable person starts doing the math in their head. Why would I lock in $3,200 a month when I could take $500,000? Put it in the market and pull 7% or 8% a year. That feeling has a name in behavioral finance: recency bias. Whatever happened recently feels like what will keep happening. The last 2 years of strong returns become the assumption you build a 30-year retirement on. And I get it. Gen X has been managing their own retirement since the beginning. No one handed you a pension and told you not to worry about it. You watched the dot-com crash, wipe out portfolios in 2000. You watched 2008 take another chunk. You learned the hard way to pay attention, to stay active, to not be passive about your own financial future. That instinct kept a lot of people afloat, but it can also make it hard to trust a system that says, stop managing, just receive. A pension is not exciting. There's no dashboard, no ticker, no feeling of control. You just get a deposit every month, and you're supposed to be okay with that. But here's what that deposit actually buys you that a portfolio cannot. It buys you the ability to stop checking. I've talked to people who are genuinely good investors, disciplined, patient, long-term thinkers, and even they admit, at 2 a.m., when the market drops 4% in a week, they check. They don't sell, usually. But they check. That check has a cost, not financial, psychological. A pension doesn't do that to you. $3,200 shows up whether the S&P 500 is up or down, whether the Fed raised rates or cut them, whether there's an election or a recession or a headline that wrecked everyone's morning. Think of it less as an investment and more as sleep insurance. Its job isn't to make you rich. Its job is to make sure you never have to make a scared decision with money at 63 because the market had a bad quarter. I remember the feeling of getting one of those SSA benefit statements in the mail. That blue and white form with your projected Social Security number on it. For most people, the first reaction isn't excitement. It's something quieter. Like, okay, that part is handled. A pension does the same thing. It sets a floor. And once the floor is set, everything else, your investments, your Roth, your savings, gets to operate from a position of stability instead of survival. The trap isn't that people don't understand pensions. Most people understand them fine. The trap is that they undervalue the floor because the floor doesn't show up in a brokerage account. It doesn't have a balance. You can't screenshot it. But at 72, if the market has gone sideways for 3 years and your portfolio is down, That floor is the only reason you're not cutting your medication in half to make rent. That's what's actually at stake. Not the return comparison. The floor. So you're in the window, 62 years old. Pension starts at 63. You're buying health insurance through the ACA marketplace. Your income this year looks low on paper, which means you qualify for subsidies. And your advisor says, this is the year to convert. Push some of that traditional IRA into a Roth. Pay the lower tax rate now. Let it grow tax-free for the next 20 years. The logic is clean. The timing makes sense. And it will absolutely work right up until it doesn't. Here is the mechanism most people never see. ACA subsidies are calculated based on your modified adjusted gross income for the year. Not your salary, not your pension. Your total reportable income, including every dollar you convert from a traditional IRA to a Roth. That conversion counts as ordinary income the moment you execute it. In 2026, a married couple filing jointly loses their ACA subsidies entirely if their MAGI crosses 400% of the federal poverty level. That threshold sits at roughly $83,000 for a couple. Not $200,000, not $150,000, $83,000. If you're living on $45,000 in withdrawals and you convert $40,000 to Roth, you just crossed the line, and the subsidy doesn't taper off gradually. It cuts. A couple receiving $1,200 a month in ACA subsidies can lose that entire amount in 1 year because of a conversion that looked perfectly reasonable on a tax return. That's $14,400 gone in a single year. Not because you did something reckless. Because two systems, the tax code and the healthcare subsidy formula, interact in a way that almost nobody explains before you sign the conversion paperwork. That's the first collision point. The second one hits you 2 years later. IRMAA stands for Income-Related Monthly Adjustment Amount. It's the mechanism Medicare uses to charge higher income retirees more for Part B coverage. And the income it looks at is not your income this year. It's your income from 2 years ago. So if you do a large Roth conversion in 2024 or 2025, Medicare looks at that number in 2026 when you turn 65 and enroll. If your MAGI crossed $212,000 as a married couple filing jointly, your Part B premium jumps. Not slightly. We're talking hundreds of additional dollars per month, per person, on top of your standard premium. You saved 15% in income tax on the conversion. You're now paying an extra $3,000 to $5,000 a year in Medicare premiums. That's not optimization. That's a timing problem that nobody caught because the tax advisor and the healthcare plan were never in the same room. At Wes Investor, we don't look at individual tax lines in isolation. We look at total out-of-pocket dollars remaining after every bill is paid. Because a conversion that saves you $8,000 in taxes but costs you $14,000 in subsidies is not a win. It's a $6,000 loss dressed up as a smart move. I've seen people defend these decisions because the tax math was correct. The tax math was correct. The full picture wasn't. So what does the right sequence actually look like? You map the floor first. Social Security plus pension gives you a baseline. Then you look at what your MAGI will be in each year of the gap, before pension, before Medicare, and you find the safe conversion ceiling, the number you can convert without crossing the ACA cliff or triggering an IRMAA tier. For most couples in this situation, that ceiling is somewhere between $20,000 and $40,000 per year. Smaller conversions, spread across more years, less dramatic, less satisfying on a spreadsheet. But the total dollars kept after healthcare, after Medicare, after taxes, comes out ahead. The golden window is real. The opportunity is real, but the window has hard edges. And if you don't know exactly where they are before you start converting, you're not optimizing your retirement. You're guessing with the most expensive variables in the equation. 95% of people doing Roth conversions in this window are not accounting for both collision points at the same time. They're running the tax calculation and stopping there. The question is how to use the window without triggering either trap. And that comes down to a sequence most people skip entirely. Let me show you what this actually looks like in practice. A client I worked with was 61, pension starting at 63, buying ACA coverage for herself and her husband. She had about $420,000 in a traditional IRA and was getting solid advice from her tax preparer. Use these low-income years to convert. She converted $75,000 in 1 year. Her tax preparer was happy. The conversion was technically correct. Then the subsidy calculation came back. She lost $9,000 in ACA subsidies that year, not because she did something wrong, because nobody ran both numbers at the same time. The following year, she converted $28,000 instead, stayed under the cliff, kept the subsidy, paid a little more in taxes at 70 when RMDs kicked in. But she kept $9,000 in her pocket at 61 when she actually needed it. That's the whole sequence in one example. Smaller, deliberate, coordinated. Here's how to build it for yourself. Step 1. Build your income floor. Before you touch any conversion math, write down your fixed monthly expenses, mortgage or rent, utilities, insurance, groceries, car payment, the non-negotiables. Then line that number up against what your pension plus Social Security will cover once both are running. If pension plus Social Security covers your floor, everything else, your IRA, your brokerage account, your Roth, becomes discretionary. That changes how you make decisions about all of it. You're no longer converting out of need. You're converting strategically from a stable position. If there's a gap between your floor and your guaranteed income, that gap tells you exactly how much you need to draw from savings each year before the pension starts. That number is your baseline. Don't convert on top of it without checking the next step first. Step 2. Calculate your ACA buffer zone. Before you execute any Roth conversion, pull up the current year's ACA income thresholds for your household size IM. For a married couple in 2026, the cliff is around $83,000 MAGI. Take your expected income for the year, including any withdrawals you need for living expenses, and subtract it from that threshold. What's left is your safe conversion room. If your living expenses put you at $52,000 for the year, you have roughly $31,000 of room to convert before you risk losing subsidies. Convert within that band. Stop there. It's not as aggressive as what most calculators suggest, but it keeps $1,200 a month in subsidies intact, and that matters more than a marginally larger Roth balance. Step 3. Use bridging withdrawals, not conversions, to fill the gap. If you need income in the gap years before your pension starts, consider drawing from your traditional IRA or 401k for living expenses. First, separate from any conversion strategy. A withdrawal for living expenses and a Roth conversion both show up as income, but keeping them mentally separate helps you stay under the threshold with more precision. The goal is to never let your total reportable income drift past the ACA cliff accidentally. Bridging withdrawals should be sized carefully, ideally keeping your MAGI at least $5,000 to $10,000 below the threshold to give yourself a margin for anything unexpected, a small freelance payment, interest income, a dividend distribution. And keep the IRMAA look back in mind. Whatever your income looks like in 2024 and 2025 will determine your Medicare Part B premium in 2026. If you're converting in those years, you're also setting your Medicare cost 2 years out. That calculation belongs in the same spreadsheet. You may end up paying slightly higher taxes at 70 when required minimum distributions start. That's a real trade-off. But you're paying those taxes from a position of stability with a pension floor underneath you, with Medicare costs you planned for, with a healthcare budget that didn't blow up during the years you were most active in retirement. That's not settling for less. That's choosing which problem you'd rather have. If you want the updated 2026 tax and healthcare thresholds, along with a worksheet that maps this sequence for your specific income level, subscribe to the channel. We update those numbers every year as the thresholds shift, because this is exactly the kind of calculation that changes quietly and costs people real money when they're working from last year's figures. There's one scenario worth stress testing before you finalize any of this. What if the market goes sideways for the first 3 years of your retirement? Not a crash, not 2008, just flat. The kind of flat that doesn't make headlines, but quietly erodes confidence in a portfolio that was supposed to be generating income. If you took the lump sum and you're drawing from it, a flat market in years 1 through 3 means you're selling assets at the same price you bought them, or lower, just to cover living expenses. The portfolio shrinks, not because the market failed catastrophically, but because you needed the money, and the growth wasn't there to replace what you took out. Sequence of returns risk. It's unglamorous and it's real. I've seen what that does to people psychologically. They stop going to the doctor for the thing they were going to get checked out. They skip the trip they planned. They start doing mental math every time they buy groceries. Not because they're broke. Because the number in the account is moving in the wrong direction, and there's no floor underneath it. The person with the pension doesn't have that problem. $3,200 shows up in month 1 of a flat market. It shows up in month 36 of a flat market. The deposit doesn't know what the S&P 500 did last Tuesday. This is not a hypothetical comfort. Fidelity estimates that a 65-year-old couple retiring today should plan for $330,000 to $350,000 in total lifetime healthcare costs. That number doesn't shrink because your portfolio had a rough few years. Healthcare inflation runs on its own schedule. If your income floor covers your fixed expenses, a flat market is an inconvenience. You stay the course, you wait, you don't make scared decisions with long-term money. If your income floor doesn't cover your fixed expenses, a flat market becomes a forcing function. You sell, you cut, you make permanent decisions based on temporary conditions. The pension is the floor. That's the whole argument. Tax law changes. Healthcare thresholds shift. The numbers I gave you today for 2026 will be slightly different in 2027, and different again in 2028. Even people who do this professionally have to relearn pieces of it every year. So if you've been putting off this planning because it feels too complicated, that's not a character flaw. The system is genuinely complicated. It moves. What doesn't change is the sequence. Floor first. Buffer second. Convert within the safe zone. Run the healthcare numbers in the same calculation as the tax numbers. Never let one optimizer work without knowing what the other is doing. Your pension is not a consolation prize for missing out on the market. It's a structural advantage that most retirement portfolios can't replicate at any price. The golden window is a real opportunity, but it requires precision, not enthusiasm. Don't let a good tax plan wreck a great healthcare plan. If you want to go deeper on how Social Security fits into this matrix, specifically how the timing of your Social Security claim interacts with your ACA subsidy window and your IRMAA exposure, comment Pension 2026 below. If enough people ask, that's the next video.